Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is the first full day of the 2021 Jewel Mirror Sesshin. And I think most of you were here last night, but I'm going to repeat a few of the things that were said last night. This is a hybrid sesshin. I think it's really the first one I've attended, although last year was a little bit of a hybrid session as well. There are some 16 or 17 people here on site, and I see, 15, 16, 17, 18 people, or 19 on screen. And as was mentioned last night, this is a 7-day sesshin. And Dokai said this is really a short period of time, and it will be over just like that. For those of us who are sitting every period of Zazen, I suspect we won't necessarily always feel that way. But it's true. It's true. Sesshin will soon be over. So, that means we have to make every effort to be here, moment by moment. And Sesshin is to live Zazen from morning to night. Whether we're sitting, standing, kinhin, chanting, eating, and so on. If we concentrate on our Zazen only when we're in the Zendo, and then the moment we step outside the Zendo and, oh, wow, how beautiful. There are some deer over there in the distance. I've got to tell somebody I saw them. Or, etc., etc. All the thoughts that can arise. If we forget about our Zazen, then that's not Sesshin. And that's relatively easier for those of us who are here at Hokyoji. We have this beautiful environment, quiet. You have permission to turn off your cell phones here. Throw them in the Mississippi River. Power down that computer. We won't be watching the news or reading the news for 7 days, and so on. This environment is designed, and we all know that, to help us concentrate on one thing at a time. Sesshin is really just to be here in the moment now. We all know that. We all know that, I believe. And yet, it's just not that easy. You know, we have these habits. And we're coming from the busy life elsewhere, where the mind is always engaged and seems to be chattering away with this or that. But Sesshin is really not to be negligent or scattered. When I practiced at Hosshinji Monastery, as part of the instructions for Seishin. We were always encouraged not to disturb the practice of other people. And the easiest way, we were told, to do that, to disturb another person's practice, is to start talking. And that disturbs not only your practice, but another person's practice. And probably the easiest place to start talking is at the coffee table. I don't know what it is about coffee. I don't drink coffee. But it seems like when people start drinking coffee, they start talking. So if you find that you have to start talking, drinking coffee, just go off by yourself, or even if someone approaches you. Did you see those deer this morning? You can just smile at them and turn away. 7 days is not too short to do that. In Buddhism, we say that the results are revealed right from the beginning. What's going to happen as a result of practice? Well, that's told to us right from the beginning. And we have a very difficult time to believe that. And yet, the Buddha demonstrates the result and has you look at it. And then we practice to verify for ourselves that result. It's not enough just to believe it, even though it's difficult to believe. And belief is important. Belief is important, but it's also necessary to assimilate that belief, to really go beyond that belief. Because belief, faith, if you wish, is two things. Somebody believing in something. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, whatever. And in the Soto sect, which we are members of, the teaching is that practice and realization are one. That there's no gap between the cause and the result. And that's not something we can, I believe that we can understand with our everyday thinking mind, but it's the teaching. And it's necessary to believe that. And another way we can express that result is that Zazen isn't something that I do. Rather, Zazen is sitting Zazen. Because in the same way as belief, if somebody is sitting Zazen, then it's split in two. Zazen is a condition where there is nothing. That was a good thought. Oh, no, I shouldn't be thinking that. And so on. As long as somebody is there judging this and that, that's not Zazen. We know that. Dogen Zenji clearly explains that in the Fukan Zazenki. Don't think good or bad. Don't think about this or that. I mean, it's clear, right? And yet, when we're sitting on the cushion, well, as long as I'm doing Zazen, that means you're watching your Zazen. Dogen's teaching is Zazen is Zazen. Zazen sits Zazen. It's not me who does Zazen. And that, again, is something that we don't understand at the beginning, but that's sort of like the jumping off place. You're on the diving board. You've got to dive into the water. At least we have to start with that belief. And this is something we will come to understand, to realize with our own body. We will verify that. We have to verify that. This is the way to verify that Zazen is the result. In this session, there are 3 teachers. This is unheard of in my lineage, just impossible. But we've kind of made it work for the last 4 years. Dokai, Reirin, and myself. We are all Soto priests, but you'll hear a little bit of difference, just a little bit, between what we say. And that's to be expected. But for those of you who have heard me speak before, you know I'm almost bound to say that when you're listening to what I say, you don't have to look at me. Just continue with your Zazen. Some people are counting their breaths. 1, 2, 3. Some people are just in a samadhi of breathing. Some people are just sitting, forgetting sitting. Someone asked me the other day, well, what does grinding up Zazen mean? And that means to pulverize it. If you're just sitting, that means to grind up, to pulverize Zazen by means of Zazen. And some people probably don't know what they're doing. Anyway, it's not going to help you to do your Zazen simply listening to me. Now that might not apply to the other teachers here. I don't know, but I'm confident that if I say anything that's remotely worth remembering, that will get lodged right here without trying. So please listen. No need to take notes. Just continue with your Zazen. We have agreed that this session we will talk about a text called the Genjokoan, a very well-known essay by Dogen Zenshuji, the great founder of the Soto sect in Japan. He's the man you all know. He went to China in search of the Dharma. He couldn't find anybody, any teacher in Japan. Mind you, this was 800 years ago. Anybody who could help him resolve his question, his koan, which was all of the sutras. All of the sutras say that, yes, without a doubt, all sentient beings are endowed with Buddha nature. But why is practice necessary? Why is it that all of those people, all the way back to the Buddha, who sweated blood and tears, why did they do that? Why was practice necessary if everybody has Buddha nature, right? We all know the story. And he was able to find in China Rujing Zenshuji, the man who helped him understand what he had to do. And then Dogen did it. And he had great enlightenment. I don't think, there wouldn't be Buddhism if the Buddha had not seen the morning star. Buddhism, if that had ever existed, would have been just another religion. Siddhartha Gautama would have been just another sentient being. Without that awakening. And that awakening has been passed down in the Zen school from that time. If Dogen Zenji had not been in the Zendo when his master, Rujing, had slapped the monk who was dozing next to Dogen on the tom, there wouldn't be the Genjokoan. The Genjokoan, as well as all of Dogen's writings, I feel, are written from that vantage point of his great awakening. And for that reason, trying to read Dogen and understand him intellectually, in my mind, and I'm just speaking personally, is fraught with danger. That's not to say there's no value in us reading his essay, Genjokoan, Fukan Zazengi, and so on. But for me, this has been an important part of my practice. I have not read the Shobogenzo. I've just, a few months ago, I accepted a job to proofread a new translation of the Shobogenzo. And there are nearly as many footnotes as text. It's going to take me months to do this. It'll be the first time I've read the Shobogenzo. It's about time, probably. And nevertheless, I've always had that feeling that I have to take care of Dogen. Simply because he's speaking from a different vantage point. The first words of the Genjokoan, and I'm using a translation, the one that I'm most familiar with, by Masao Abe and Norman Waddell. It's one of the older versions, and I think it stands up pretty well. The first words go like this. When all things are the Buddha Dharma, there is delusion and enlightenment. Now, I've made a few changes myself. They use the word illusion, but I like delusion. There is delusion and enlightenment. Practice, birth, death, Buddhas, and sentient beings. When all things are without self, there is no delusion or enlightenment. No birth, no death, no Buddhas, or sentient beings. The way of Buddha is originally beyond any fullness or lack. And for that reason, there's birth and death, delusion and enlightenment, sentient beings, and Buddhas. Yet for all that, flowers fall amid our regret and yearning, and hated weeds grow apace. Well, that means weeds keep on growing. Just a little bit about this chapter. We know that the Genjokoan was written early on in his career. The first date is autumn 1233, probably written at Hokyoji, his first monastery, which is just south of Kyoto. And it has pride of place as being the first text in both the 75 and 60 chapter compilations of the Shobogenzo. There are various versions of the Shobogenzo. This was all put together and throughout history has been modified here and there, but I've learned just recently from one of the men who's writing the introduction to the new translation, which I'm proofreading, that in 1252, very near the end of Dogen Zenji's life, he had completed the 75 chapter version in the order that this new version will be in. And Genjokoan, it's a relatively short text. You can get it on 2 or 3 pieces of letter size paper. That comes at the beginning, chapter number 1. So I'm quite sure that for Dogen Zenji, this was an important text. Now, I've heard people say that it was revised during his life, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure, and yet the version that we're most familiar with, that is we see in translation, was dated 1252. So it's very likely that he did revise it and polish it over his lifetime. The Genjokoan, the theme of this essay, and you will see a variety of English translations of this. This term we can date from the 9th century China. A certain priest saw a monk approaching and said, "Yours is a settled case, so I spare you the 30 blows." So this translation, "yours is a settled case," is a reference to the Genjokoan. So you can think of that as one English translation. In other words, Dogen Zenji did not invent this term. It might be easy to think, oh yeah, that's something Dogen Zenji, but and that's one of these things I see from proofreading this new text with all of these footnotes, that he borrowed so much. Amazing. How could he do that? We have computers now. We can check and correlate this and that. But how was he able to do that? A mystery. Anyway, this was a term that many people used, Genjokoan. In fact, in the Shobogenzo, it comes up, I think, some 40 times. So he's used, and sometimes he inverts. And like in the Fukanza Zengi, it's Koan Genjo. And so playing with these words, we know from Dogen Zenji, this was his genius. Sometimes that first character is written with the character to see. But usually we think Genjo means to manifest. The koan. To manifest the koan. Now, koan, well, I'll speak about that in a little while, but this is a word that we often do not associate these days with the Soto sect. We're more inclined to think of the Rinzai sect. For those of you who have done some study, I see some gray hairs here. Those of you who have a few books at home about Zen, you know that, right? In the Soto sect, many people don't talk about koan, especially in Japan. It's like, my teacher had an expression, to reject something without having tried it. You've never had sauerkraut. Oh, I'm not going to have sauerkraut. I don't like that. But you've never tried it. If you tried it, you might really like it. But no, sauerkraut, koans, no. That's pretty much how it is now in Japan. Here in America, I think, and I do hear of teachers mentioning the word now and then. Anyway, here's another example of the way Dogen Zenshi referred to the Genjokoan. Now, this comes from his extensive record, his collection of Dharma talks that were given much later than 1233. And this is short. It goes like this. Everybody, so please imagine he's talking to the monks at Eiheiji. They're probably sitting in Zazen, just like you guys. Everybody must wholeheartedly engage in this Genjokoan, which is nothing other than the complete manifestation of ultimate reality. What is this Genjokoan? It is all of the Buddhas in the 10 directions, all of the ancestral masters, both from long ago and now, present, and is fully manifesting right now. Do you see it? It's nothing other than opening and closing the doors at the entrance to the Zendo. It's nothing other than sitting down and getting up from the sitting cushion. Why don't you all realize this excellent Genjokoan? Today, this mountain monk, that's Dogen Zenshi speaking about himself, without begrudging my life or my eyebrows, for the sake of all of you, expounds this repeatedly. And then he slammed his staff on the floor and walked out of the Zendo. A little bit different than the flowery language we're going to hear in the Genjokoan. Now and then someone comes to me and says, I've been sitting for some time. Would it be all right to look at a koan? And I'd say, sure. But it might be good to remember that all of the teachings of the Buddhas and ancestral masters are koans. And as I just spoke about Dogen Zenshi, perhaps the most basic koan is the teaching that all sentient beings are endowed with Buddha nature. That's you. All people, your neighbors, even those people who vote differently than you, etc. And not only people. You might think it only refers to people, but no. Grass, trees, mountains, rivers. Everything is the Buddha nature. We're taught that our life itself is the manifestation of ultimate reality. How could it be different? So to forget ourselves in each thing, each instant, this is what we call Zazen, right? The original meaning of koan, a word that, as I mentioned, came from China, was a law established by the country. Since it was decided this is a law, that meant it wasn't possible to violate it, or interfere with it, or try and change it on your own. It was the way things are. And so I believe, in my mind, Genjokoan, this, as I said earlier, you can find all sorts of different English translations of this term. But in my mind, Dogen Zenji is using this term to really focus on the moment now. That we mustn't seek outside the moment now. There's a wonderful koan that goes along with what I'm just saying here, attributed to Kanzan Kokushi, the great Rinzai master. He was not a man of many words. At least we do not have many records left behind. And it said he just left behind this one koan. Everything is the perfect Buddha. Why are people deluded? In other words, Dogen Zenji, in a little bit more flowery language, is going to go through that in this Genjokoan. Someone was telling me the other day, well, in the Genjokoan, Dogen doesn't mention Zazen. But I think that would be unfair to Dogen Zenji. Especially if we think of the context. He had written Fukan Zazengi on returning from China, his first thing, his manifesto. It was encouraging everybody to do Zazen. That was the first thing. And we spoke about that text last year in this session. A wonderful text. And then he wrote Gaku Doyo Jinshu, Guidelines for Studying the Way. 10 more aspects of practice and awakening. He does speak about Zazen in that text. And then he wrote Bendowa, his tale, partly his tale of going to China, of that realization, Jiju Zanmai, and then the various questions and answers, right? I think you're all familiar with these texts. And then Genjokoan. He was working on these texts around the same time, including in the Genjokoan, probably his most famous teaching that I think I'll talk about. I had one more chance to talk on Wednesday, I think. To study the way of Buddha is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. I'm always amazed. I see, as you know, in Japan, there are many different schools of Buddhism. But it's not unusual to see priests from the Pure Land sect or from the Rinzai sect referring to this very teaching. Although he doesn't mention Zazen specifically. It's the elephant in the room. I don't think he had to mention it because he'd been already talking about it in various teachings. But in any case, you've been practicing just sitting or focusing on the breath, maybe, or counting the breath. And yes, it is okay, in my mind, in my view, to practice with a koan. For example, the verse attributed to Bodhidharma. A transmission outside the teachings. Well, how could something be transmitted without speaking about it? Not based or dependent on words and letters. Okay, well, why is it necessary then to speak about the teaching? Directly pointing at the mind. Well, what does that mean? What is the mind? Who's directly pointing? Seeing into one's nature and realizing Buddhahood. But who's seeing? What's being seen? Etc. Just an example of how you could pick up a koan. A question. Inquiring mind, call it. Questioning mind. And all of the other teachings as well. The key there is why. And just to become the question. A koan practice is not about answering the koan. I think that's the downfall. My teacher was quite critical of the way koan practice has evolved, as we know it nowadays in the Rinzai sect. For that reason that it tends to become a matter of answering a question. Okay, that sounds pretty close. I'll give you another koan. Okay, yeah, I'll give you another one. And they have thousands of these. Sometimes likened to a ladder, going up a ladder. Does the dog have moo? No. Does the dog have Buddha nature? It's Buddha nature, etc. My teacher was fond of saying that one koan is enough. If you truly resolve, if one koan, in effect, if you really become one koan, the bottom falls out. There'll be no more koan-like material. There's no longer anyone to resolve those koans. And that could also be the Genjokoan. When all dharmas are the Buddha Dharma, there's delusion and enlightenment. Practice, birth, death, Buddhas, and sentient beings. The very first sentence in the Genjokoan. We've just begun, says Shin. You might think, I don't know why I'm here. I think I'm in over my head. I don't know if I can last for 7 days like this. That's the Buddha Dharma. All thoughts arising, delusion, random thoughts, these are all the Buddha Dharma. When all dharmas, when everything is the Buddha Dharma, there's delusion and enlightenment. Practice, birth, death, and Buddhas and sentient beings. If that's your reality, what other reality? The Genjokoan, the manifestation of ultimate reality, that's your reality. Don't look outside of it. Don't imagine that, one day everything is going to be beautiful. One day I will be released. We're taught that over and over again. That if we seek for the Buddha Dharma, even though we're in the middle of the Buddha Dharma, as Hakuin Zenji said, it's like a person in the midst of water, crying out in thirst. Like the son of a rich man who wandered away among the poor. We make that mistake. Nobody else is doing that, I believe, I hope. Don't blame it on me. Although there are, I know, different teachings here. We create that seeking mind. The Genjokoan, it's right here. As I just said, opening the door and closing the door. Sitting down and getting up. And even if your legs hurt, you keep that position. And let Zazen do Zazen. And so our practice is to be one. We have the rules here. We have the schedule. It's all laid out. We have this lovely environment. I think it is easier here, on site. It's quiet. No traffic. No cell phone. We've already thrown that out. We've powered down the computer. And still, there might be a doubt there. We have to work through that doubt. When all things are without self, there is no delusion or enlightenment. No birth or death. No Buddhas or sentient beings. This might sound like a contradiction. This is to verify for ourselves that indeed everything is without self. That all things appear and disappear because of causes and conditions. There is no nothing. There's no, how do they say that? There's no there. There is nothing permanent except change. The way of Buddha is originally beyond fullness or lack. And for that reason, there's birth and death, delusion and enlightenment, sentient beings and Buddhas. Yet for all that, flowers fall amid our regret and yearning, and hated weeds grow apace. Those weeds just keep on growing. That's what that grow apace. Again, this might sound contradictory, First he's saying these things exist, and he's saying they don't exist. And now he's saying, well, they kind of do and don't, and, well, my teacher's teacher was fond of saying that things exist and don't exist simultaneously. Existing, yet not existing. Not existing, yet existing. We are here. I believe we all heard that clap. But where did the clap go? Who heard the clap? And so Dogen is saying that the way of Buddha transcends all dharmas. This is a condition where something can become anything. While not existing anywhere. This is our life and death. He has more to say about that later. Birth and death. I have to be completely transparent and say that some of these comments I'm borrowing from my teacher's teacher. I've never studied the Genjokoan. I've read it more than a few times, but I've never tried to analyze it. So I'm getting some help here. Thank you. But anyway, he says it's like a dream within a dream. We can't grasp hold of it. Things are changing that fast. Anyway, who's going to grasp hold of it? If everything's changing, that means this thing, too, is changing that fast. And even though we can't grasp hold of it, if one thought arises on this side, then we suffer because of attachment. Flowers fall. We like flowers. We love flowers. I love flowers. They fall. I feel sad. Yes. Weeds. Got to get out there and weed. Weeds grow. Keep growing. Rain. More and more weeds. Got to keep pulling those weeds. I can't say I don't like that, but that's how it is. But because we're attached to our idea of what nirvana might be, and what the opposite of that is, we don't like that. We suffer if we are overly attached to these things. When the discriminating mind does not arise, nothing offends. Well-known teaching. Things don't exist for us to judge whether they're good or bad. And yet, we hate to see flowers fall and don't like to see weeds flourish. But the flowers falling, they don't say, oh, look at me, I'm falling. Feel sorry for me, I'm falling. No, they don't say that. The weeds don't, oh, ha ha ha, see, I'm back again. Ha ha ha. They don't say that. We create those discriminations. And yet, there are these feelings. These are, we could say, emotions. In one way, these are completely natural. To some extent, I believe we have to accept what's natural and yet not be overly attached here. It's only we, it's only the person, really the ego, which distinguishes. Flowers falling, weeds growing, can't have that, no. We create that. If we don't truly become empty, which is our goal. I know some teachers don't like that word, goal. But I was not raised that way. And I'm running out of time. I've been going on too long here. Flowers fall. Weeds flourish. I didn't think I would be speaking this long. But let me just finish that off. And say about a goal that some people teach just sitting. Practice and realization are one. Don't create a goal beyond that. Don't do that. But I think there's a blind spot there. Because not having a goal becomes a goal. I'm just going to sit. Don't tell me that's not a goal. I'm just sitting. If you're really just sitting, you've got to get rid of just. How am I going to do that? I'm going to leave you with that koan. Thanks for listening, guys. And for those of you at home, keep the faith. Is there a verse?
May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. These are numberless. I vow to free them. The illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. The illusions are numberless. I vow to free them. The illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.